Hey guys, so you guys must be familiar with Michael Michelini from Global From Asia podcast. He's also now the director of content for Alpha Rock Capital. He's in Manila as well, and we sat down and he asked 27 entrepreneurs that are involved with business in China, from sourcing, a manufacturing standpoint, quality control, e-commerce entrepreneurs, finance, typical digital nomads that are just living in China and Asia that are involved with business, about their experiences with the coronavirus. So he compiled like this amazing article, which is also a podcast, and it was 27 entrepreneurs. So it's globalfromasia.com/coronavirus. I was obviously one of those people, and I basically broke down my experiences. I think it was a really interesting article to see. Some of the guys are living in Hong Kong, some of the guys are in mainland, stuck in mainland, and some people that don't live in China but are involved with business in China, just talking about how this, pandemic has affected them. So definitely check that out. The link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to the podcast as well, it's globalfromasia.com/coronavirus. What's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of SourceFind Asia, co-host of the Made in China podcast, and the host of the SourceFind Asia YouTube channel. Of course, I'm back with another one in Manila. There's a beautiful view of the Manila Golf Course. Background skyline is Makati. So this is BGC. The airport's right over there. So periodically, maybe even while this video is being recorded, periodically you'll probably see some planes taking off from the airport. It's a pretty nice view. And at night, the city gets lit up. So just quickly before I jump into today's topic, I wanted to apologize because my audio is going to be a little bit off. I'm recording this with my podcast mic, but then I didn't want to hold the mic to my face. My lapel mics aren't functioning for some reason. It's only working on my DSLR, but not the iPhone. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. This video was a quick update I wanted to make on how the coronavirus is affecting my business. So I made a video when I was in Jakarta 3 weeks ago, where I just kind of explained what I think was going to happen and what I thought was going to happen and what was actually happening in terms of my actual business. So if you want to check out that video, I would recommend you watch that before you watch this. And yeah, it's just going to be a quick update on how things have been progressing. So before I get into it, if you haven't watched the first one, basically what I just talked about was how, Chinese New Year typically starts at a certain time, and then it's usually the vacation's 2 to 3 weeks, or 2 weeks officially, but it's really 3 weeks, 4 weeks unofficially. It's usually slow after Chinese New Year, but in this particular situation, the government pushed back the Chinese New Year, the holiday, by a week officially. But then when I was talking to people in China and some of the people that are in the industries and also owners of factories and stuff, they were saying it's more like this is going to be pushed back 2 weeks. So, instead of the holiday being 3 weeks, it ended up being like a month and a half. And in reality, even when the factory started coming back, it's not like everybody came back to work. It was the office workers initially. As I thought, there would be a slow rollout. And what I also said in the other video is I figured that they would implement some strict health code laws. So for the factories that are actually allowed to open, they would have to follow very strict procedures to prevent the virus from spreading and other people getting sick and stuff like that. Because of course, being in a small space with a lot of people is basically how something like that would spread really quickly. And factories in general are just not the most hygienic environments. So yeah, that's exactly what happened. So if you want to watch the video and see what I said in full, check it out. Link will be in the description below. It's just how the coronavirus is affecting my business, my thoughts, or business in China, my thoughts. Essentially what happened was, the first week after the government said, we're pushing the holiday back by a week. When the first week, some of the factories started opening, but really it was mostly the office workers. So the sales staff and the kind of people that you would contact in Alibaba initially. And even for me, with my business, I just told my team to work remotely. I told them there's no point of, if they're in their hometowns or whatever, there's no point of going to Guangzhou because you want to be traveling. There's no point. We're not going to be going to any factories. even to get into office, that you have to go through some sort of permit thing and have yourself get some sort of full clean bill of health certificate that you then take to be able to access your office. So I just told them to stay where they were and work remotely, and I think that's what a lot of the factories did. After the first week, so when I'm referencing this, I'm talking February 11th, so the things were pushed back by a week. So after about February 15, 16, the factories actually started coming back to work, but very few. So it was more the office workers and the factories open, but a few of the factories started to reopen. And then really things started to ramp up more around the 20th to 25th of February is when a lot more of the factories started coming back. Something to keep in mind, if you're dealing with factories right now, or you're contacting factories, or you have production that was running before Chinese New Year, just because they say they're back, it's really difficult to tell at what capacity, because they might say that they're back and they're 50%, 60%, but do you really know that? Because the workers don't want to come back. If it's risky, the workers didn't want to come back. Like in general, after Chinese New Year, the factories take a while to get back to full capacity because a lot of times the workers don't come back anyways. So now if you have something like a virus going on, it even makes it more difficult for them to get workers to get back to work. And then obviously there's a high demand right now because everybody's pushed back. A good example would be, I think I referenced this in the video that I did when I was in Jakarta, and one of my clients was mid-production prior to Chinese New Year. Well, not mid, they were about 80% done. And I asked them if they wanted to ship out, the 80% before the holiday, and they said it was fine, and they could wait, a few weeks after Chinese New Year to get the rest of the goods shipped out, produced and shipped out. And then obviously this virus thing happens and it pushes back everything by 2 to 3 weeks. When our factory reopened, they said, hey, and I predicted this happening. They were like, hey, no, you know what, we're gonna be done in 2 weeks. The goods will be ready to be inspected and shipped out. So obviously we started making arrangements, but I also told my client, I said, you guys need to be prepared for the idea that this 2-week timeline is not gonna happen. Because I just don't see how a factory coming back from Chinese New Year, let alone a factory coming back from Chinese New Year with the coronavirus situation, would be able to get back up to that capacity. And also, they're backed up with previous orders. Like, I just didn't see how that was possible. But obviously, if they're saying 2 weeks, they're saying 2 weeks. So lo and behold, 2 weeks later, or a week and a half later, when we start to kind of want to book a ship to put the products on, they're saying, oh yeah, we're not going to be done. And I was like, kind of knew that might be a possibility, and I asked them why, and they said they just couldn't get enough workers. When they gave us that initial timeline, they thought that they were going to be able to hire enough factory workers to finish productions within that 1.5 2 week time period, but then they just weren't able to get enough workers. So that, I can imagine, is happening to a lot of factories, not just ours. So you really need to be prepared for the idea that productions right now are going to take significantly longer. And just, if you have something, like I said this in the previous video, if you have a production that's done, maybe you want to ship some of your goods now and ship the rest later. Maybe you want to take that risk, and not the risk, maybe you want to take that financial hit by making sure you don't run out of inventory. Another thing you might do is maybe split your shipments, or maybe send 20%, 30% by air, and then the rest by sea. Again, just spending a little bit more money to make sure that you don't end up out of stock. Because another thing that's happening is okay, so now you have obviously the factories slowly getting back to ramping up productions, but you also have lack of workers available in general. Then you have the virus making people reluctant to go back to work. And then you have the factories being backed up with orders from before Chinese New Year. And then now you probably have a lot of people that are panicking and placing orders because they're worried that they won't be able to have inventory. And then on top of that, the seaport themselves, the shipping docks and the seaports themselves are backed up. And you have the restriction of travel between China. Like, there's so many checkpoints and roadblocks and stuff like that, that it's just difficult to get stuff from point A to point B within the country right now. So there's a lot of different aspects that are going to delay shipments. And once the goods get to the shipping port, they're backed up with a ton of orders. So it's going to take a while to clear customs. Right now, the customs, the Chinese customs and international customs are all fucking on red alert. So they're inspecting way more goods and containers and packages than they used to. For example, last year, the entire 2019, we had 250 express shipments, around 250 express shipments coming to and from our office. So these are samples that clients sent us and samples that we received from suppliers. Out of that 250, only about 2 of them got flagged. And not flagged like there was something wrong with them. They just got flagged for further review, and then potentially we had to pay some taxes and stuff like that. And that's normal. It's a random thing. Sometimes things get flagged because they see that you've declared that this item is $10, but it's like a big box, so they're wondering what could be that big and that only costs $10 or something like that. So you're gonna have to make sure that the information is accurate, or at least you're not, like, if it's a sample and it's a sample, you made it yourself or whatever, like, at least give it a realistic value so there's less of a chance it being flagged. 2 out of 250 is not bad. We had about 6 samples being sent to us during Chinese New Year from clients around the world. 100% of those shipments in the space of 2 weeks got flagged for further inspection and customs fees. So that just shows you the climate right now. It's like, it's not even just goods that are leaving China, it's goods that are coming into China. They're just, everything's being inspected. Everything's on high alert, right? That's something else that can hold up your production. Beyond that, when the goods leave China, once it clears customs and leave China, when it arrives in the US or Europe or wherever, chances are the fact that it's coming from China is also gonna mean that they're gonna inspect it thoroughly. So you really have to be prepared. Like, if you're placing a mass production order now in March, typically what would take a month and a half and maybe 2 months with shipping to arrive. So you receive that in May. We're now talking June, July. And you really have to factor that into whatever you're doing right now within your respective businesses. In terms of the overall climate, like I said in my video, I remain positive. That's just the kind of person that I am. I try to be optimistic. The fact that right now I'm seeing, so like I said, the first week there was the office workers, and then the factory started coming back. But right now, I would say in the last week and a half, so I'm recording this on March 5th, pretty much the last week of February and the first week of March, we're at like 90-95% of factories are back. I just don't know the capacity at which they're back. I know that they've started productions and we're talking, and it's like almost like it feels like business as usual, but the reality is we can't. Right now we're restricted with travel, so we can't physically go to a lot of these factories. Maybe not until the end of March, early April. Inspection companies can go, but I don't necessarily want my staff to go, and at the same time the travel is restricted within the country. So in that regard, from a business standpoint, yeah, we're back to business, and the factories are back, and we're getting quotes, and we're ordering samples and things like that. My team is still, for the most part, staying in the hometowns, but our main project manager, who basically is operations manager, Imogen, is driving down from her hometown. So instead of her I wouldn't have wanted her to take a train or a bus or a plane. I didn't want her to be in that, like, again, confined spaces, lots of people. So she's driving down, which is a much more safer. She's driving back to Guangzhou. But it's still somewhat limited to move around the city. There's still checkpoints everywhere, but it's slowly but surely opening up. And then as far as what I know in terms of the news, obviously I'm not physically in China, so it's hard to tell. And you always have to question the news sometimes. But for the most part, the cases have slowed down in China itself. The deaths have also slowed down significantly in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, which is breeding more confidence with the government. And the factories are slowly but surely getting back to it. So I feel like, in terms of mass productions, I feel like the country should be back in like 2 to 3 weeks, as in terms of factories being back to full capacity. But again, being what I said before, with orders being backed up and just the amount of time it's going to take to get back to full capacity and the panic buying that's probably going to happen, productions are just going to take longer. You have to be prepared for that. From a personal standpoint, I was always going to come to Manila in April. Like, that was always my plan originally. And basically I was going to come like in end of March. This just accelerated my move. So I just signed a 1-year contract here. Of course, I'm still going to have to go back to China from time to time. As it stands, I'm still keeping my apartment in China. But, I just don't know when it's going to be safe to go there. Because there's another aspect of, I could take the risk and go back to China to touch base with my team, but I might not be allowed to come back to the Philippines. I know the Philippines wasn't even allowing people from Hong Kong to come here. I might not be allowed to go to a lot of countries if I was to go to China right now. So that's an interesting space that I'm in, is like, I do want to go back and, touch base with my team at the beginning of the business year for us. So ideally, I would want to be there to sit down with everybody face to face. But obviously, I don't want to risk my own health, and I also don't want to be restricted with my travel. So we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that the way it looks, maybe in April, May, probably May would be a more realistic time to go back to China just for a couple weeks. That's sort of where I'm at from my own personal standpoint. But like I said, it just sort of accelerated my move to the Philippines. But I'm excited. I've been here for 3 weeks and things are going well. I can't wait to move into my actual apartment. It's not this place. And Nick, who's been on the YouTube channel before, is coming down. So anyways, that's my quick update on the coronavirus. Like I said, things are progressing and things are slowly but surely getting back to normal. It's going to take a while. Obviously, you hear reports about the virus spreading out of China, but I'm also hearing reports about there being a vaccine, so try to be optimistic. Alright guys, if you like this kind of content, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. I'm heading to the gym, that's why I'm in my casual gym clothes, and it's really fucking hot with the sun behind me, so I'm gonna have to go. Alright, have a good one.